Special City Council meeting workshop. Let's call this order. All right. Any public comments?
I didn't see any.
No? Okay. Discussion regarding city-owned facilities.
I was going to pass that to Jim Algren.
Right.
See, we have a special picture.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I just turned mine off too.
There you go. Whoops. That would have been good. Vice Mayor and City Council. What we want to do today is a follow-up to our trip, if you will, that we took 2 weeks ago maybe, with regard to going around and looking at a couple, three of the properties that the city owns. And following that, I would like to give you some recommendations to those properties. If you recall, we first went to the Excelsior Building. From the Excelsior Building, we went to what we refer to as the Blue House, which is the property at the south runway, if you will, of the airport, and then to the Armory. And you know, I think the spreadsheet that is on the top there is what I had handed out when we did our little trip, and below are my recommendations, or the staff recommendations, I guess better put. The Excelsior Building, the thought process there is to sell the Excelsior Building. That would be the staff recommendation. We've had it appraised here back. I have the appraisal, and I think I offered that even on our trip, but we had it appraised about a year ago. I don't have that exact date here. July, I believe, of last July. I'm wrong. June 7th of 2014. How much closer can we get to a year than that, huh? Anyway, we had it appraised. It was appraised at $24,928.27. So. Anyway, and I think, as you recall, as we went through that Excelsior Building, you know, there's some major issues with that structure. It leaks in multiple places. There are roof and ceiling panels now falling in. The Performing Arts Center folks that were in it have vacated the building, and so for the most part right now, we, the city, needs to really get it cleaned up for what's in there, but ultimately the recommendation is to sell that building, and the recommendation would be by auction. Now, I did have a couple minutes with our city attorney, and, excuse me, yeah, with Randall, and you know, based on the value, it could be, it's certainly able to be, it's owned by the city of Guthrie, it could be auctioned, it could also be sold on a real estate type deal, I guess, as well. But the recommendation would be to auction that property. So next, and I'm, you know, not looking for an immediate decision or anything.
Can we ask questions?
This is just absolutely.
And we're just sitting on it. Do we need the OG&E and OMG? Do we need to have those on, or can we shut those off for now?
These were 24
annual figures, right?
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah. Exactly.
Are they on, or?
The short answer is yes. I've asked Kevin to look at flipping the switches on them. Hopefully he has done that, but I you know, trust but verify. It should be off.
The building was not cleaned out until
just recently, before,
like,
right until our
month. When I say cleaned out, by the individuals that were leasing it, took a while to remove their stuff, so we left on electricity for them.
Okay. So we're in that process. Okay. Do we have thoughts when we might auction, if we auction?
I never.
Whenever.
It's just up to us to decide that.
Right.
What would be the pros and cons of auctioning versus real estate?
That's a good question. You know, we've
auctioned. Sorry, if you list it for over $25,000, you're going to have to go to other people to sell it. Your appraisal right now is under 25, so it doesn't take it over people. An auction is really, I think, the only way you can sell it at this time.
Okay.
And I think our history is that we sold the fire station with an auction, and we sold the west
building, 4 buildings.
Yeah. So.
Could we recommend for the staff to think about a date to sell?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep. Evelyn Nephew called me today and said that her and a group were apparently, and I was a little bit confused by the conversation, just a little bit, because I was tied up doing something else. But my understanding is that, did a group have a year to do something with that building? And has it been a year?
We, when you say, I'm sorry, maybe a little, which group?
I don't know.
I think it's Friends of the Excelsior Library.
Yeah, if they had a year to do something with it, I don't think we should really be even talking about it.
Well, we started those conversations last June.
Last June.
Last
It's-
June.
Has it been that long?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And that we were told by the same group that they didn't have the funds to program it or do anything with it or fix it up, or they're welcome at the auction to buy it, of course. We've always offered that, but we have not heard any movement on it.
I wonder if we could put the proceeds toward like a monument or something there, talking about the history of that property.
There is a monument there with some writing on it currently that documents the historical significance of the property. Of course, not the building, but the property. So you could leave that or add to it, or you've got other options. Really, it's just a lack of funding, that the city doesn't have the funds to, there was a talk on our tour about, do you demolish the building and turn it into a public park? It just all comes back to money.
When was there any kind of documents drawn up between this group and the city?
No.
Nothing, just verbal?
They just-
You take a year?
I don't think it was
Conversation. I don't know.
meetings
that
and
we-
meetings.
I went to
We
two
met
of the
multiple
meetings.
times with them.
They all basically said they don't have
Their
any
money.
They had nothing, there's no way they could even purchase it. I don't even think at auction, unless somebody come up with the
Was
money.
they a
somewhere.
benefactor
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah.
What type of money would it take to put it, make it usable again?
We haven't had a structural engineer out. One of your major issues is the footing has completely slipped. You've got cracks that are inch wide all the way through cinder blocks. You've got a new roof that definitely need to be used. Definitely need to be done.
And
We've
the
priced
water-
those at $60,000. When you start adding structural engineer into what I couldn't even estimate, you're easily into six figures.
What was the name of the group?
Friends of the Library, Friends of the
Yeah.
Excelsior Library.
I'd like to see us at least have a sit down with them. If not, myself, a couple other council people, and get a feel and just let them know what we're, out of respect, and let them know, hey, it's going to go to auction if y'all aren't going to do something on it, and apparently they're not. But out of respect, I'd like to sit down with them before we put a date to auction it.
That would be fine.
So we can talk about the next council, and we can do it between now and then.
Sure.
Is that fair?
Whatever
Do
you
you
want
want
to
to
do.
identify?
Maybe
Couple
Jeff and
council.
I and you or Ed or Cheryl, or maybe three of us maybe can meet with them and just,
At least find out what they want to do, if
Exactly.
they want anything. I mean, 'cause we don't have the funds, this is something
Right.
like that. There's no way.
agree.
I'll be glad to sit on that. I
At B and
have talked
HB.
with well-being, part of HB, and knowing Evelyn and understanding the LCHS
Okay,
and that kind
I'll set something up between now and the next council, and then we can pull it back in
So
the next
we can
workshop.
put you three on it, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, let us know. All right, so Blue House.
The Blue House, you also had the opportunity to tour the Blue House, and if you recall, the shape of the Blue House was the shape it was in.
That's the old dog
Well,
animal shelter for temporary.
It was a temporary animal shelter for a period of time, and then now currently its usage is the Friends of the Library using it for sorting books and storing books up to when they'd have a sale, type of thing. Otherwise, and then, so that's how it's currently being utilized now. And there's some records in there. There's records for storage from the police department, and there's some financial records there from the perspective of the finance department, and we would have to move those out. We certainly have places we can find a home for them, and some of them, I think, as you recall, were probably outdated and just need to be quote unquote shredded. We do that annual shred day, and we try to keep up, and we will handle that in terms of the records. That's
How much land is there?
That's a good question. I do not know the acreage of that.
I think at least 5 acres from what I
It's
can
quite
see.
a bit.
Maybe as much as 10.
It's quite a bit, but it cannot be occupied. That's, even if, because of the airport, and the FAA, and the requirement to purchase, when that was purchased along with the Wilkins property, where Wilkins had their body shop and residents there, and of course
Well,
that
going
was
through
moved.
that building, it seemed to be fairly intact. Is there some reason? I mean, it definitely needs help, and it's definitely not.
Well, it was a house.
It is exactly, but what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't falling apart, and it didn't look to be. Obviously, it can't be utilized as a house, and nor would you want to. It's not in any shape to be able to do that. But tearing it down, is that something that's just better suited for that, or?
We
It's a
provide,
financial-
it's a financial
keeping
thing.
an
You
appreciating
spend-
asset or
spend
not.
$3,000.
That's what it comes down to.
Because I mean, it did need a roof. Other than that, I mean, I could see.
If you're not gonna
Well, the
program
windows
it or
were-
use it.
The windows had been vandalized, and they had, you know, some of them, not all of them, but they had been vandalized, and it had plywood on them, you know, so.
Why don't we look at selling it? Have we thought about
You
why?
can't.
The FAA.
FAA.
What can it be used for?
Why?
Vacant land?
Why? What about the FAA keeps us?
It's in the approach
It's in
on the
approach.
runway, so if you,
The glide path.
Yep.
you aren't
Oh,
with
it's
us.
been- I know
That's
where it
right,
is.
so like, for example, to the left of that property, the individual had to sell and they demolished, so the FAA buys that and you can't occupy, you can't live in that area. So we can use it for storage, but we can't sell it.
And it's an eyesore.
Yeah,
for
yeah, I
the
know where
neighbors.
it's at.
And the neighbors called quite a bit on it.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I understand that it's just short of upkeep on it. It's probably better to go ahead and raise it and just.
Because why keep a depreciating asset if you're not going to use it?
Well, and it's,
Got a pond on it?
basically spend about $3,000 a year on this blue house, and it's not gonna cost much more than that to demolish it.
And we don't
It's gonna
add,
pay for itself
That's
over
what I'm
time.
gonna say, yeah, what's the cost?
and we
of
don't add in the
demolition?
tree removal and the labor and the, every time it gets broken into and.
So the best,
Or the
best
insurance
would
and
be.
all
It's
that.
Best answer is
Get rid of it.
just get rid
Yeah.
of it.
I have a quote that is dated June 23rd, 2014, so it's almost a year old also. Not as close as the appraisal for the Excelsior building, but the quote to demo it, you know, this was to give us a ballpark, you know, and this may change, but it's a ballpark. It was $7,885, so $7,885, and that's to demolish the wood house. Price includes all debris to a legal landfill, haul all concrete footing, slabs, and foundation off the site, and then grade it with the dirt available.
It seems kinda high. Why is it?
I have no, we asked for a quote, we got a quote.
Can we do fire training in it, since it's
Is
ours?
it asbestos?
We have not done
That's about right.
Is it?
If it's got asbestos.
fire training. The police
If
have
it's asbestos,
used,
I get that.
our police department has used that
I
building
thought it was
for
one
training.
fiber.
I mean,
And
that
that
is,
is wood houses.
The
No,
county
it's
was
just
also.
one.
It's
Yeah.
But could we not do fire training in it and burn it?
Burn it, train
No.
with that?
We've asked.
DEQ friends on
Deep,
that?
no,
Yeah.
we tried
Yeah,
that.
the reason
Seems reasonable.
We tried.
What was the reasoning? What was it?
There's a whole lot of laws on that.
Should throw that up in lawsuits.
If fire chief was here, he can explain it, but
Okay.
DEQ
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
just
got
allow us
lead
to go
paint
burn
up, so it's
buildings in the
house
city
down.
limits
We
for training.
we had
It needs to be
demolished
outside.
the Guthrie Lake House, and that was looked into at that point in time, and it was ruled that we couldn't do
Okay, let's move on to the outbuilding.
Unless it's
That's
accidental.
it. The outbuilding, which we all had an opportunity to take a peek at that, which is in pretty good shape. It's a nice metal building. It's, you know, currently being used for what I call cold storage.
Oh, this is the one behind.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. And it had, you know, the Christmas wreaths, if you will, that were all in the nice wooded crates and all crated up. So it's an excellent cold storage, and the thought process would be to continue using it as cold storage. You know, and it works out great for the Parks Department in the winter because they can bring in their equipment in there, and that gives them more room down at their space at the
Mowers.
at the cemetery. Yes, yep. So.
The criminal people. Wow.
Being in an approach on that land, could we build more storage there?
I can't answer that.
Wouldn't be a livable thing, but it
I
could
have to go look
definitely
at
be
those
like
contracts.
Storage, yeah.
Or a fenced area for.
Well, we don't love that our storage is there, it's just that it happened to
Well,
be a
right,
good
but we
place.
never can do anything with it.
Yeah, so for example, the issue, the reason Blue moves, the park superintendent moves his stuff there is just because it's available. The dream would be to have storage at the cemetery where they keep their equipment. We're out of room at the cemetery, so what they do is in the winter, they move all of that out there, and of course, that's not very close. You know, if I wanted to build more storage, I'd probably put it at the Public Works facility if I was gonna build something, because we've got space there, or at the cemetery.
Well, could the FAA buy the property? I mean, we can't sell it, but I mean, they would buy that kind of thing, wouldn't they? Don't they?
The
I mean,
FAA?
that's, or whoever.
I believe the
Yes,
FAA
they
actually
did.
did buy it.
Did buy
They
it,
gave
but
us
we
the money
can't.
to buy it, and we bought it, so it's ours. It's part of the airport property. So the city.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's all airport
So it's
related.
airport.
Right, right. And that acreage that was the Wilkins is also ours too. Yep.
Okay.
So we're still gonna have to,
We bought it.
we're still along the
And we're still paying for
90%.
utilities and insuring it, and
Yep.
it'll pay for itself in 2 years.
It was a match.
Right.
We are
We
doing
don't
that.
lock it down,
We are
so.
doing that, yes. And so with that recommendation, if we did knock it down, that moves us on to our third spot. We went to the Armory and got an opportunity to see the Armory and what we did to clean that Armory up compared to where it was months ago, and with our sale that we had. And so the thought process on the Armory would be to allow the quote-unquote Friends of the Library to take their progress and their work that they do with their books and their sorting, to give them a space,
Right.
you know, gratis, a space at the Armory so that they could continue to do that and support our library. And then, you know, another thought that we had, and I think everybody had that opportunity to go through the Armory and see the training room where we do use that for predominantly it's public safety, meaning the fire and police. And what we'd like to do if we could is upgrade that, you know, in terms of size. You know, in terms of training space now, the city is very limited. The current fire department has maybe a room that will allow for maybe tops 20 people, and that's a stretch. And the Armory, if we were to expand that and put some money into it, and I think we've had a small estimate here of maybe $25,000, which we don't have the money to do, but if we were to maybe, again, you know, what are we going to do with the money from the Excelsior building? There's a potential area to use it, but it could be improved to have a pretty nice training area there at the Armory. So, but that's a thought, you know, and it would have to be, I mean, designated and budgeted and all that, and council approval, but it
And I
is
want
a
to be
thought.
clear, it's a multi-agency training facility. You'll drive by there and you'll see vehicles from all over the state. Our police department and fire department do excellent jobs in providing, whether it be DWI training or various trainings. And so when we bring people into our home here at the city, and y'all saw what shape it's in very, very, very poor shape. And as we know what salaries we pay our public safety, you have to also think we're trying to recruit out of other agencies. And if we pay very little and then we put them in a shabby place, I mean, I don't know if y'all saw the bathrooms. It should be embarrassing. So I can always support a decent room, maybe with paint on the walls, and electrical outlets would be nice, and maybe some AV in there.
So somebody riding a
Maybe
bicycle
tables that aren't
generates
peeling, or
electricity.
maybe chairs that weren't donated to us 30 years ago. So I would strongly support a training space for public safety. It's embarrassing.
Basement needs to be fixed.
We
Big time.
drained about 4 inches of water out of it.
From all the rain that we had, it took on water, and there is a drain in there, but we couldn't get it unplugged, so we had to actually pump water out. We had, yes, 4 inches of water. So when we did the tour, we probably had a couple 2 inches.
It was probably,
And
boy, it was going over the feet.
And it grew.
But it's all the way, yeah, I mean, it was full
Full.
last week.
Yeah, you couldn't really get in there
I mean,
very far.
you couldn't take one step last week and you'd have been in water.
And
Now,
what,
Kevin,
I think, I get often asked, why did the city allow the Excelsior building to get into the shape it's in? And I can't answer that over the last 40 years. What I can say is that the city does not have the funds to maintain its facilities. If we choose to keep facilities, we have to keep up with that infrastructure. The problem is, it all goes back to money. I'm not proud of that fact. The Excelsior building is a disgrace. That building is an absolute embarrassment, and if we want to keep facilities, then this armory might be a good example of showing that you've got to do some basic things every once in a while. We can't just have a building and wait 50 years and then see what happens to it, because we know what happened to the Excelsior, and it's a sad state for the Excelsior, and I can see why people would be upset with the city for not keeping it up. It comes back to money.
Well, I think we're also lucky on the Armory, because the military, I guess, was it DOD or somebody came down, was it DOD? Came down and spent a lot of money refurbishing that to a point where, I mean, just taking it all out so it's livable and took the asbestos out, I assume.
Asbestos in the lab.
And then
that was a
donated
good-
us the building.
It's like a year, I think, a year of renovation. So there's been already a lot of money put into it, not necessarily to make it look nice, but to make it livable, which the problem with the Excelsior building, it's not livable. I mean, you get sick if you stay there very long because all the mold and, you know, all the water and you know, so it's not a safe place for anyone to stay. So, and we just have to make those tough decisions because we're talking, as you said, maybe 6 figures to upgrade that Excelsior building. We just don't have that money. So.
And I think, you know, and this is up to council, of course, but be thinking about, you know, it's kind of back to a philosophy of what are you going to use your sales tax dollars for? What are you going to use your people's money for? And, you know, the most local governments will say you want to do it to provide services to your people or to your organization or to your police or your fire. You know, with the Excelsior, it wasn't providing a public good. You talk a lot about public goods. The Blue House is not providing a public good at the moment, except for Friends of the Library, but we can move them. So you can keep pouring our people's money into things that aren't for a public good. And so I just want you all to be thinking when you go through facilities, what's the interest that it has in the community?
Any other thoughts on facilities?
No, I would like to say thank you for you folks, you know, us going on that little trip and giving you guys an opportunity to see some of the things we deal with in terms of the properties. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for your work on this. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Jim? Okay, let's move forward. Request for future items of discussion.
The airport will be doing their annual update with you guys, and so these are good questions for airport that may relate to that property.
Okay.
So your next workshop will have that one. Your next workshop will also be dilapidated buildings.
And we're going to add the Blue House to that line item, I guess.
Currently, the budget for demolishing, we have $55,000 in that budget. What we had carved out when we made the budget was thinking about 10 to 20 if the city needed it for public facilities. Seeing a potential ballpark of 8,000, what we want to do is carve out, that 8,000 if you want to demolish the Blue House, and the remainder will be for private property demo. So those are kind of run side to side on how do we, basically we have more houses in the community that we've identified for demolishing than we have money. And so it just starts a list. You start and you triage it and you say you can get rid of 6 buildings for, 6 facilities for this much, and so we'll end up giving the police chief a dollar amount once you carve this out. So they'll talk about that in the next workshop.
Do we have a guesstimate on how many dilapidated buildings we have?
I sent out 27 letters for immediate demolishment, around 27 to 31. It started at 31, and then we realized someone lived in one, and didn't know that. And so sometimes it's hard to
Is
tell.
that hitting a high percentage of overall dilapidated structures that are private dilapidated structures, or is that?
It's a good number, but what we knew when we sent those letters is that we don't have enough money to do that. So we're trying to get support from the landowners, the property owners, to demolish it themselves, which is always the best way to do this. Unfortunately, that gets expensive, and it's back to people not seeing their property for 40 years.
Can you clarify how much the range that it costs to tear down a dilapidated structure?
I think the minimum we've seen is 4,000, about 4,000 on a property.
4 to 6, yeah.
Is a lower end.
So we kind of average 5,000.
We bid it.
And we bid it out.
And as you said earlier, that's a wooden structure, so if it's a brick or a stone structure, it's going to be a lot more.
You start getting into masonry work and garage doors and things like that. A lot of these buildings are kind of just wooden out, little things.
And asbestos also increases the price
It could.
by a bit.
So we bid all that out. So y'all will get all that.
Yeah, I'd like to, for some future items, I would like to, I want to, when contracts come to council, they need to be workshop prior. And that's just my gut and my opinion on it. I think that we need to, instead of getting a contract today, we should have been looking at this contract 2 weeks ago, a
Which
month
one?
ago. Well, this one that is on the agenda tonight for one,
We can put on an agenda.
but I'm talking
for
about
the-
all contracts.
For the council to vote to do that, because it makes our job very difficult, because we negotiate and we only have so much time to get it to you. So this is gonna push us a month into doing each contract, and it depends what type of contract. We have some, so I would need the council to vote on, if y'all want us to do that, you're gonna spend a lot of time.
But we could have a workshop on the workshops, on contract
On what?
workshops. I
Okay.
mean, you spend the time to talk about,
Because your council
workshops
meeting
for contracts.
is the time to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of a council meeting. Y'all can spend 5 hours in a council meeting and talk about every single line of a contract. So you have it, you know, I think there's this idea that you have to workshop it before you talk about it, but your council meeting is for you to talk about it. I mean, that's the purpose of a council meeting. So, I mean, if you want to workshop it 2 weeks in advance, because we can't put it on the same night, that's what I'm saying, you're going to extend into major contract problems, in my opinion. Because we negotiate, let's say for a month, and we get it on agenda, which I have to do the Wednesday prior to the meeting, so you're already wasting a week of their time. So from the vendor relationships, there's a lot more time built in there. Then I'd have to workshop it, wait 2 weeks or 3, depending on which month, and then get it to a vote. Y'all can decide to do that. I would never suggest it.
What kind of contracts are you talking about?
Well, have you read this contract? This is one that I'd be talking about.
Then it's on the agenda.
Okay.
It's on the agenda, yeah. And that's the purpose of public meetings, is that you come in and y'all can talk about it as much as you want. We bring in the individuals that sign it, so that individual is here today. And so you can ask all those questions.
And the reason that is, I've sort of put the quietus on a lot of things that were coming to the workshop, because they were items that were actually on the agenda. And we were having a full discussion of those items at the workshop, where the public is noticed to come to the 7 o'clock council meeting to talk about those items. Y'all generally were gonna make up your mind before the 7 o'clock meeting. And that's, to me, not the way the open meeting is supposed to work. So basically, I just told council several months ago, if it's an agenda item, don't be workshop. Unless you're gonna notice it and notice the public that you're gonna be talking about it and basically deciding the issue at the workshop, not at the open council. That's the flip side of that issue. It can present some real problems.
And Randall, if you agree, I mean, the purpose of a workshop is to have staff give updates, give information, provide. It's not to really discuss agenda items. So that's why it's on an agenda. I mean.
But the point you're making, Brian, is a contract like the agreement that's on tonight to discuss, y'all should have had your packet, I don't know when you get them, it should have been
Friday.
last week, Friday, before the weekend.
Right.
So you've got the weekend and Monday and Tuesday to read it. And if you've got questions that are either legal or something else, that's kind of what I mentioned at the orientation meeting. Call me, call the city manager and say, I don't understand this, what are we doing here, I'm getting calls on this, what's your take? Or what
Because
are
we
doing?
can change that contract even though it's gone in the packet. Let's say you find a typo. You know, Lord knows we make them. So you find a typo, call me, bam, it's fixed. I've done that already before within minutes, and then we give you a new contract.
All right, well, let's talk about it in council.
Right.
And then I'll continue from where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good policy.
Good policy to call the city manager and let them know.
Good.
okay. Any other future items? All right. Seeing none, I adjourn.